In this video, I'll show you how to install the InfoBurst platform. Now, before we can start the installation, our server environment needs to meet certain requirements, and you can see the full list of requirements in our Platform Requirements article in the InfoSol Help Desk knowledge base. We'll cover the key requirements here. Our first requirement is a Windows server. Today we'll be working with Server 2016. We do recommend that InfoBurst have a dedicated server, but that can be a physical server or a virtual machine. Next, we require a few different versions of the Microsoft .NET framework be installed. Here in our Server Manager, under Roles and Features, you can see that I have installed ahead of time both the .NET Framework 3.5 and 4.6. The next requirement is a blank repository to host the InfoBurst database repository. For that, we support both SQL Server and Oracle. In this example, we're using SQL Server, and I've created a blank database called InfoBurst. You'll want to have your database credentials at hand. Later in the installation process, we'll use them to create the InfoBurst repository. Then our last requirement is the InfoBurst installer. For that, you can go to help.infosol.com. It's the InfoSol help desk, and we're looking for the software download section and an article called InfoBurst Software. Now, this particular article is only visible to logged in users, so make sure you're signed up for the help desk, logged in, and that will take you to the site hosting our software. You'll want to copy this password down. You may be prompted for it. You'll look under InfoBurst Platform, and here you'll see displayed the latest available build of InfoBurst. At the time of this recording, the latest build is 2.3.1, but you may see a later build when you view this site. If I open up the 2.31 folder, you'll see a number of files. This includes our original 2.31 installer, but since that release, there have been a few fix packs released. So again, we want to utilize the latest available version of InfoBurst. So as of the time of this recording, that would be Build 2.31 Fix Pack 2. So I want the installer for that. We don't want the updater, we want the install file. So I've downloaded that to my server, and I'm ready to run the installation. Now, I'm logged in as administrator, so I can just run the installer. If you're not logged in as the Windows administrator account, I do recommend right-clicking and running as administrator. So we'll run the installer. This goes very quickly. We'll accept the license agreement. You have the option to install InfoBurst in another location. I'm going to utilize the default location and install. During the installation process, the installer is copying the InfoBurst application files, registering InfoBurst, creating the InfoBurst service. This should take a few moments. And we're done. Now, before we can use InfoBurst, there are a few post-installation steps that we need to follow. The first is the creation of the InfoBurst repository. For that, we'll need to open up a command prompt, change directory into the InfoBurst application root folder, and we're going to run a program called create repo, all one word. We're then prompted for our database type. We're using SQL Server, so I'll select number 1. Now, if you're utilizing Oracle, the following prompts might look a bit different. For guidelines on how to fill out these prompts, please view the installation article in the InfoSol Help Desk knowledge base that will provide specific guidelines for Oracle. For our SQL Server repository, I'm prompted for my SQL Server user. I'm using the SA account, provide my password. The database server, so for server versions 2012 and later, it requires both the server name and the server instance name. So our server name is b2vm2016, and then a slash, and then the instance name. My instance is SQL Express. I'm using SQL Server Express, but yours may be something different. The catalog is the database, and we named it InfoBurst. And we're ready to create the repository. We just say yes. And that goes very quickly. Our tables and indexes are created, and the repository creation step is complete. Now we'll want to move on to the service account. So if we open up the Windows Services panel, we need to assign to the InfoBurst service a dedicated or proper Windows account. Right now it's running under the default system account. So it's called InfoBurst Platform. We're going to stop that and open up the properties. And under the Logon tab, we'll assign our service account. So this service account should be a local administrator or a member of the local administrators group, and also a member of the domain where the account has sufficient access on any network resources that InfoBurst might need, like network share folders. So we will use the stock administrator account. And provide our password. And say OK. And we will start the service. OK. The last thing to do before running InfoBurst is to create or apply a server license. Now to do that, you'll need to create an ID file, which you will then submit to InfoSol Help Desk to request a proper license key. For that, you'll require what we call an IID file. To create that, we're going to run our license program. So back here in the command prompt, we're still in the InfoBurst root folder. We'll type in license, enter, and that'll open up the license program. You can also find that license program by browsing to the InfoBurst application root folder in Windows Explorer and just double-clicking on the license executable. Next, we'll create or select Create ID, and this message just tells us that a file was created in the root folder. So if we open up we'll click OK here. If we open up the InfoBurst application root here in Windows Explorer, under Program Files x86, InfoSol, and then InfoBurst Platform, you can see the IID file was created prefixed with the server name. So this is the file that you will submit via ticket to the InfoSol Help Desk requesting your license key. We'll respond with that key file, which you will then copy back here into the InfoBurst application root, and I've done that ahead of time, so I'll just copy in my key file. Okay. Now if we run the license program again, we can install our key. So we'll just do that here from Windows Explorer. So we're looking for the license program. So we'll double click here and we'll say install. This is going to open up to the InfoBurst application root. If you've put the key file someplace else, just browse to that location. So here's my key file. I'll select it and click open. And the license is now installed successfully. And our last step is to simply restart the InfoBurst service for the new license to take effect. So we can close all of this. Back here in the services panel, we'll just do one last restart. We'll just right click and say restart. And now we're ready to run the InfoBurst user interface. From the server, because the InfoBurst interface requires Flash, I'm going to utilize Chrome because Internet Explorer on Windows Server does not have Flash Player installed by default. So we need the server name, the InfoBurst port, which is 8551, InfoSol/InfoBurst. Now, depending on your deployment, you may need to allow access to the 8551 and certain other InfoBurst ports through your Windows firewall. Again, please see the platform requirements article to see what ports should be opened for intranet access. And if we say enter, the InfoBurst user interface is rendered, which means we have successfully installed the InfoBurst platform.